What's up, dudes and dudes to the internet? My name's Seth, and we are back again with another Trove. Today we're going to be doing an updated tutorial to my flux farming guide. Now, people have been asking me to do an update to my flux farming guide slash tutorial for a very, very long time. However, I never really felt the need to actually do it because a lot of the ways of actually grinding out flux still applied today to what ended up happening in my older video, right? It was like really, really old though. Now, that said, the Trove Adventures update has actually seen quite a few new ways of actually grinding out flux. And I'm also going to be talking about some new things that haven't actually been added to the game that you should keep in mind for the future, because it's kind of like a more long-term way of making flux rather than the immediate, which is most of all what we're going to be focusing on right now today. So before we end up getting into anything, we're not going to be giving away any prizes or anything, just the information. So I would appreciate if you would hit that like button. It helps the video show up in searches and stuff like that. And hopefully we can get this video to be popular enough that it ends up swamping out like my other flux farming tutorial video, because I've had a couple updated flux farming guides that weren't really as popular as my oldest one, and that's why I think a lot of people end up kind of mistranslating, like, what the, this video is like super old, but it's like, yeah, of course it is. I have updated ones. But anyways, I don't mean to get off topic here. So there's quite a few different ways of actually making flux. Most notably, it's just going to be the straight to the point, grind the resources that people don't want to grind. That is just going to always end up being true to most video games, but Trove in general is going to be like that. Like, there's a lot of resources that new players do actually have access to very, very early on that late game players need and are going to end up wanting, but don't want to actually end up grinding, myself included. So because we've seen so many different items added to the Chaos Core Crafter right here, not only just classes in general are going to end up taking cupcakes, glacial shards, primordial flames, and all of that stuff. All of those resources are going to end up being pretty okay as far as grinding. Diamonds are going to be something that you probably could end up grinding and selling, maybe as a little bit of a cheaty secret, kind of for mid-tier flux farmers. Robotic salvage is another guaranteed. You're always going to end up making flux off of that because it's an annoying resource to get. You get robotic salvage just rarely from farming neon enemies. Not to mention the biome itself is really dark and depressing, so if you want to grind there for like 20 hours and you don't really get bored of it or anything, it's probably one of the most efficient biomes to end up grinding, just because of the fact that you get robotic salvage out of it. Not to mention there is the robotic salvage tome, which I've seen other videos talking about why other tomes are actually better than the cybernetic catalog, but the cybernetic catalog is always going to end up being the best. Like, it just pretty much is, until they end up actually updating some of these older tomes, which they definitely need to, like the flux tutorial right here. The flux tome right here gives 100 flux for completing like 25 dungeons. That's just not worth it anymore. Like, the devs need to update that to 1 to 5,000 flux maybe, and then that could actually end up being really, really useful, because otherwise you get 15 robotic parts out of this, which ends up equaling to more flux than most of the other tomes, which the items do end up fluctuating depending on what new items end up getting added to the game. But generally, you're pretty safe if you end up actually having this tome. You can end up buying it, or you can end up going all the way through the rune crafting to end up getting the tome right here. Now, speaking of rune crafting, because rune crafting and the other professions are require pretty much just nothing but resources, it means that mastery farmers can very easily end up getting their mastery up, so long as they end up having all the flux, which most people at the end game are pay to win anyways. Some people aren't. Good luck to them. But you could just buy these resources and kind of just skip past the whole rune crafting. And because of it, radiant shards, crystallized clouds, blank scrolls, those are going to end up being very good things that you can end up grinding for. Blank scrolls are just loot collected recipes that you get from dungeons and stuff. And generally, I'm pretty sure those end up selling for like more than the actual recipe themselves. Like, let's take a quick little peek. The Forbidden Spires recipe is 200 each, whereas a blank scroll is going to end up being 90 each. Ugh. Okay, so never mind that. I guess you want to grind the Forbidden Spires, which I was going to say that anyways, but I didn't know blank scrolls were that much lower than the Forbidden Spires recipes. Well, anyways, The new biome ended up adding a whole bunch of different things that you can end up grinding. Cinnabar is a pretty good resource. Generally, we've seen a lot of new items being added to the game with the Trove Adventures update, mind you, that end up taking Cinnabar, including like this mount and everything like that. It's really, really tough to grind out all the amount of Cinnabar that you actually need, especially to end up putting down biomes in your club of the new Forbidden Spires biome, right? That said, until we end up seeing Cinnabar starting to, take up like a lot more, you need a lot more of it for crafting resources and stuff, the price is going to end up slowly going down. Now this is where, like I said, this is going to be a timed thing, right? So if you are a player that is playing Trove and you're going to continue playing it in the years to come, I would suggest that you actually save your Cinnabar. Because as of right now, the Phoenix, which I do have a Phoenix farming tutorial on like this mount right here, if you're curious, the Phoenix is going to end up being right down here for 2,000 Cinnabar, which was pretty pricey in the first weeks of this update. There are confirmed going to be 5 more, or is it there's going to be 5 more of them? The 5 rulers. Okay, so there's going to be 4 more mounts that are from the Forbidden Spires that we're going to end up grinding out. And I would put money on the fact that it's going to end up taking more Cinnabar. So you can, if you want, save your Cinnabar for when those things end up being added to the game, right? Primordial Flame. I'm an end game player and I'm running low on Primordial Flames because a lot of items end up actually taking Primal Flames. Like seriously, it's ridiculous the amount of items that end up taking the Primordial Flame. That's the whole thing, is you can actually do a very good job of just looking in the collections menu here and just kind of going through all of these, just seeing like what resources are the most common that are also the most difficult to actually attain. So you can see Somber Souls. That's another resource that you can very easily end up grinding and gain lots of flux from, because so many things end up taking it, but it's actually a very difficult resource to get. Somber Souls are very rarely going to end up being in ore pockets, or veins, I guess I should say, in the Cursed Vale biome, right? So you can get that at Cursed Skylands as well. However, the biggest and most expensive of all has always and will always be, I'm pretty sure, meteorite fragments. So meteorite fragments, I have a video specifically talking about this resource because so many people still have a very hard time trying to end up getting this. Meteorite fragments are going to end up being exclusive to the dinosaur biome. The dinosaur biome is going to have 2 different generations, one where it's a swampland and one where it's going to have a big canopy of trees. The meteorite fragments spawn on top of the canopy of trees. It's going to be like a little blue plant. That's what it's going to end up looking like. But that is going to end up being a very, very good way of grinding flux out of it. Like, seriously. Another option that you can end up doing, we'll see how long it ends up holding, but you can actually grind for Adventurine over at the fixtures, right? So if we go on over here, and if we end up... Oh, it's lagging out. I think we DC'd. There we go, right back on the server. Okay, so anyways, these idiots are going to end up giving you various quests, right? Check out my Adventurine farming tutorial that talks about clue bits and stuff. But did you know that you can very skillfully go to your personal chest, open your crafting inventory, which is this 3rd flux tab right here, go to your dragon coin tab, and there's your Adventurine. So if you actually click and drag it over to your personal chest, you can do this on console, but it's a little bit weird. Let's just take 10. So we move that out, then we go back to our normal inventory and make sure that you drag and drop it all the way back in, right? Yeah, so that's how you end up actually physically getting your Adventurine into your normal inventory, and then you can end up loot collecting it for quite a bit of glim. Now, I don't know whether or not this is actually a bug, just because the amount of glim that you actually end up getting from the Adventurine is staggering. Like, seriously, it's probably the most efficient way of actually getting yourself glim. So you can do that to very easily make yourself some flux as well, because glim sells for a lot, right? So there's going to be a couple different methods as well. Glim is going to end up being another resource that you can end up going for. Most of all, it's not so much about selling the glim itself, but you can sell items that you can purchase with glim. So you can end up getting the allied chests from the ships that are in the treasure isles and stuff like that. Those ship merchants are going to end up selling you little boxes with allies in them, so you can get like the Prowling Shadow or the Raptor Berserker are most notably the big ones that you want to actually get if you're trying to actually sell them. But then there's also the merchants that sell all of the sails. Those are actually not too bad. You can get fishing lures and junk like that. Generally, you can trade glim for other resources that are going to end up being more worthwhile, and actually overall is very, very cost effective. So fishing is another way that you can end up not only getting glim, but you can get tons and tons of flux through that, because of the jumping jadefish. That's the biggest one. Now, I'm going to have a video come out very shortly that is going to talk about plasma fishing and stuff like that. I still got to work on that one. It's just a time-consuming video, right? But plasma fishing was recently added to Trove Adventures, meaning that as of right now, all of the plasma fish sell for a whole lot. That said, you can't actually sell any of the fish on the market itself. It's like this right here. You're going to have to use the player market, so you're going to have to join the trade chat and start bartering and messing around with people and stuff like that, right? So that's going to be how you end up selling fish, and you can sell all the plasma fish for a pretty good amount. But then the jumping jadefish are going to be expensive because the bubble dragon takes 1,800 of them. Like seriously, people are going crazy for jumping jadefish right now. Again, this is a timed thing, so we'll see what ends up happening overall, but fishing is something that generally people don't enjoy doing, and jumping jadefish are like really low on the market right now, like as in there's not a lot of them, so you can actually sell these for a lot. I would capitalize on that right now if you can. But fishing's really, really boring, so that's kind of the trade-off, right? Then there's also going to be LED block recipes. Did you know that these were actually tradable? Because LED block recipes are actually going to be a very rare drop from any recipe dungeon in the game. Now that said, that means of course you can't specifically farm for them because it's just random chance, but if you're going for like Forbidden Spires and just going for all the recipe dungeons to try and get yourself advanced recipes, why not just keep at it so that you can hopefully end up getting yourself some LED blocks recipes as well, because these are going to end up always being pretty good in price because of the fact that normally you have to grind out tons and tons of Adventurine in order to actually get this block recipe, right? And the ones that you get from Adventurine, from the merchants, are not tradable. Those ones are not tradable. The only tradable ones are the ones that you find very rarely from recipe dungeons. So then there's also going to end up being Stellar Souls, which are slowly starting to go down in price. They were pretty good just because of the fact that we'd be using them for the stellar rings and stuff like that. However, this is another timely thing. You can either capitalize on this and start selling your Stellar Souls if you feel the need to, but generally speaking, you're going to have to be kind of late game in order to actually grind the Stellar Souls, because you got to be able to solo hard Shadow Towers, because that ends up giving very good drop chance. Ultra, of course, gives better drop chance, but then you gotta be soloing Ultra, and you gotta have at least 400 Magic Find to get a Stellar as a drop, but I would recommend having maybe 2,000 and up for your Magic Find to get Stellars more commonly throughout the day, right? Like I'm sitting on 4,000 Magic Find, and if I'm grinding the Shadow Towers like all day long, I could probably end up filling up maybe half of this screen right here, or maybe even this whole inventory section, or maybe even the whole inventory. I don't know. It's been a while since I ended up grinding that much just for the Stellars, right? But either way, it's something that's definitely worth looking at. However, again, the timely manner is that the devs actually have confirmed that they are going to end up adding another item or resource that is going to end up taking Stellar Souls. Hopefully this time some type of a consumable item or something that you can constantly repeat, meaning that the Forged Stellar Souls are going to end up constantly being drained out of the community, and thus the price is going to end up increasing. So again, I would recommend, if you don't plan on quitting Trove, save all your Stellar Souls now so that you can end up capitalizing and selling them all for a lot more whenever that update ends up hitting, because that update could end up being late 2018 to maybe even 2019. Who knows how quickly it's going to end up showing up? It might even be the next update. I don't know. But that's the other thing too to keep in mind, is that whenever new events end up coming out that end up needing certain resources and stuff, you can always count on those for being a very quick way of selling a whole bunch of items really, really quickly for a lot of flux. Now, that said, within the first couple days of the event, when all of the people that are mastery farming and stuff like that have already rushed through the event and gone completely like, I'm going to spend all my flux on this new item, those people, when they're gone and done with it, the items are going to decrease in price, and just slowly end up going back to normal price. Mounts are another thing where if there's like an event that ends up having a tradable mount or something like that, those will end up being very expensive at first, usually within like the first day, and then they end up dropping to half price like the day after, usually, right? And then last but not least, which of course is going to be the most common for starting players, is just the flux artifacts and crystals and stuff, because these things are great. These are going to very rarely end up just dropping out of dungeon chests when you end up completing a dungeon, and they're going to end up giving you flux. You just loot collect them and it gives you flux. Like, that's just, it's such a great system. I think that's awesome that they ended up adding these. It gives a lot more incentive just for normal grinding, because you can go out into the world and actually do stuff while also getting yourself lots of flux. Now, I don't think that these actually drop out of recipe dungeons. I think they only drop out of dungeon chests, and I don't know whether or not you can get them out of shadow towers. Somebody confirm in the comments down below. I would appreciate it. But either way, it's another very good way that you can end up grinding flux, but it's not like a way that you can specifically grind it. It's just kind of a passive thing that you would do on the side of farming all the other resources and stuff like that, right? So anyways, I hope that you found this video helpful, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. That pretty much covers the best methods that I know of actually making flux for a free-to-play player, because otherwise most everything else is pay to win, just with the credit pouches and stuff like that. And as always, last but not least, the best way to actually grind flux in this game is flipping stuff on the market. I've never learned how to do it. I can't be bothered because it's very time consuming, and you also have to have a lot of flux in order to buy a whole bunch of a resource. And if somebody else ends up putting their resource up for cheaper, you got to buy that and slowly just buy all of the resource and force the market value up so that people end up buying your resource for higher than what the normal price was. That's what flipping is on the market. I don't care though. I can't be bothered to do that. If I'm going to learn stock, I'm going to do it in real life because it's more of a benefit than in a video game. Thanks so much for watching though, folks. Very much appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. That's also going to build up loyalty points to my merch store. Links are in the description for that, where you can buy this shirt and a bunch of other stuff for the holidays. And then if you want to go the extra mile as a fan, you can actually donate to me for absolutely free with Gawkbox. Links are in the description explaining more about that. Sign on and stay epic, everybody.